So, one question that Indians always raise in terms of filmmaking is, why are there sex scenes? Why is there nudity? We do not want to see this. This is vulgar. Okay, I get it. I get that some people are not interested in seeing a little bit of extra skin. They get uncomfortable because of their repressed nature, because of their childhoods, or whatever their other trauma is. But the question that often arises is sex even necessary in the context of a film? Or is the visual depiction of sexuality and nudity necessary? Now, this is a complicated question, and we're going to try and break it down in this video. So, the first thing we need to ask is, can sexuality or the proposition of sex or the idea of sex or the implication of sex be shown without showing the actual sex scene? The short answer would be yes, it definitely can. Some great examples are Vidya Balan sucking a thumb in Ishqiya, and then there's the scene from Aya where Rani Mukherjee goes to a petrol pump and you know what happens next. I don't think I need to be explaining what these scenes mean to you. If I do, then you should probably not be watching this video. Now, these are visual portrayals of sexuality. They actually imply the act of sex without showing it. And that's a great way to visually depict sexual tension or desire, but not the act itself. Yes, the act itself can be depicted by showing a door closing or the old Bollywood way of having two flowers kiss. But we need to understand why sex scenes exist outside of objectification and titillation of the audience. Now let's answer the next question, which is, are sex scenes necessary? Depending on the situation, sex scenes can imply a lot of different things. It can be an act of aggression, it can be a show of intimacy, love, or it can be lust. It can be a multitude of things within a single episode of a show. So in this context, one great example to look at is the show Good Girls. Now, Good Girls is a show from NBC that I think later came on Netflix, and it was an amazing show, but sadly it got cancelled after a few seasons. But I definitely recommend you watch it. Basically, the premise of Good Girls is that three moms get into some shady business while trying to make a little extra money. Now, one of them is Elizabeth, played by Christina Hendricks. Elizabeth happens to have some kind of sexual chemistry with their main gang friend, Rio. Now, in the process of all their criminal work, the women discover a lot of different sides to them. And for Elizabeth, that side is her entrepreneurial side. She discovers that she can be a good businesswoman. In season 2, episode 4, Pick Your Poison, Elizabeth is on a date with her husband. She proposes some business ideas to her husband, and he just brushes them off like they're nothing. Like he's the only one who has the right to think of the business. And this pulls Elizabeth out of that date. She doesn't feel any love or respect for her husband at that moment. She kind of ignores him, and her eyes set on Rio, who's at the bar, who has been treating her as a legitimate business partner, treating her with the respect that she deserves. And that is why in that moment, Elizabeth invites Rio into the bathroom with her, where they have a sexual encounter. Now, the point of this sexual encounter is for Elizabeth to feel empowered and pleasured. The reason for this is because she has just been invalidated by her husband, and she is validated by Rio. Now, she starts by looking into the mirror in the bathroom. She's looking at herself, she's looking at her business partner, and she's feeling powerful. And here, the sex is of a very physical nature. So, Rio's part doesn't really matter here. It's about Elizabeth. So his face is not really shown for most of the scene, and Elizabeth's pleasure is portrayed by her hitting the napkin dispenser and napkins coming out. One very important thing to note about this scene is there's no kissing whatsoever. Now, this is one kind of sex that Elizabeth has with Rio on this occasion. But on another occasion, which is in season 2, episode 9, one last time, she has different intentions. Elizabeth plans on ending her partnership with Rio, and at this time, she invites him to her home. Here, she offers him a sandwich and she looks nervous, like it's a date. She invites him to her bedroom, the most intimate space in her house. And here, we see an intimacy which we did not see in the bathroom scene. Now, in the bathroom scene, there was a little bit of revealing of skin and cleavage, etc., and it was sexual in nature. But here in the bedroom, Elizabeth takes off her shoes and Rio looks at her mismatched socks. And the visual depiction of those mismatched socks shows that Rio can see a lot more of Elizabeth right now than he could see in that bathroom. That this is more vulnerable, more intimate than in the bathroom. And that is why the two proceed to kiss each other, and then the rest is not shown on screen because it's not relevant. Now, that's the perfect example of how sex between the same two characters can hold different meanings in the same show, depending on the situation and how it can be portrayed visually. Now, that's beautiful. But there's another aspect to sex which we see in the wonderful, wonderful The Handmaid's Tale. Now, we are going to be discussing sexual assault and rape from this point on. If you are triggered by that, please feel free to skip to this time code on the screen right now. Now, if you don't know what The Handmaid's Tale is all about, it's about a dystopian world where America has become a nation called Gilead, which lives by archaic, messed up laws, because the world has become largely infertile and the few fertile women have been rounded up and turned into handmaids. Now, the purpose of the handmaid in the show is very disturbing. Now, in this show, the few fertile women who have been turned into handmaids are placed in the houses of commanders of Gilead, and their role is to perform the ceremony with the commander and his wife. The disturbing part is that this ceremony is basically the handmaid lying down in bed, held down by the commander's wife as the commander rapes her. And it is quite disturbing to watch. This ceremony is supposed to be religious because it's supposed to produce babies which will belong to the commander and his wife and not to the handmaid. She will just be passed on to the next household, which is terrible, of course. We are following the journey in the show mainly of Offred or June. And she's called Offred because her commander is named Fred. So she doesn't have a name of her own. Her name is based on her commander's name. But we are going to focus on season 1, episode 5, where the dynamic even of this non-consensual situation is changed in some ways. The episode is called Faithful, and in this episode, June is recounting her relationship with her husband, who has managed to escape to Canada, but she is thinking about him and her relationship with him and how it developed. In this episode, we see that June has some chemistry with the driver of the family. His name is Nick. There's a little bit of harmless eyeing here and there and nothing major. Now, on this day, everything changes because June has been getting some sort of entertainment from the commander, who has been trying to keep her happy by letting her read or playing Scrabble with her. And June is kind of enjoying the little bit of independence she gets in this world where women are not allowed to read, and the punishment for reading is getting their fingers chopped off. At the same time, June has this dynamic with Nick where they just eye each other and they don't really speak personally, but there's something going on there. Now, all of this is going on in the background when suddenly Serena, who is the commander's wife, asks June if she wants to try another way to conceive a child, because that's the best way for June to survive in that world. And she asks June if she would like to have intercourse with Nick. And June agrees. Now we have something in the show which we didn't have all this time, which is consent. It is still dubious consent because in a way June is agreeing to something for her own preservation. She doesn't necessarily want to do it, but she has been asked and she has said yes. So there is a sort of consensual dynamic there. unlike the rest of the show where she's raped and there's no consent in rape. So, yeah. Now, we have a scene between Nick and June. Now, the important thing to note here is that until this point, every time we have seen the ceremony being performed, June has been looking up at the ceiling, completely detaching from the ceremony, disassociating. Now, when she has to do kind of the same thing with Nick, and Serena is in the room, but she's not looking because she doesn't have to. It's not the ceremony. This is an unofficial thing they're doing. June doesn't look up at the ceiling or dissociate. She lets the thing happen and she's not really getting into it. But she starts looking around the room even as Nick is inside her. And she's absorbing his surroundings and what Nick has, the things he possesses, the things he owns. And then she, for a second, turns to look at him and she notices that he was looking at her. And this is a little personal touch there because June would never look at Fred the way she just looked at Nick while he's having sex with her. And at the end, she also grabs him for a second. And there's a sort of comfort in the skin-on-skin contact here, which is not true for whenever she has to be with the commander. In the same episode, since her and the commander have a strange dynamic at this point, during the ceremony, the commander starts looking at her and June feels strange. She keeps feeling like she's helping the commander cheat on Serena, who is right there. It's like Serena will see Fred cheating on her with June, and it is against June's will. And Fred grabs her thighs at this point, and she wants him to let go so bad, not just because she's disgusted by his touch, maybe, but also because she feels like she's doing something wrong. At the same time, her association with Nick makes her feel like she cheated on her husband Luke, even though she did something for self-preservation. Because there is some emotion there. She feels something. She feels pleasure. She feels love, maybe. It's still blooming. It's not quite there yet, but it's coming. She feels like she's cheating on her husband because she feels a connection to Nick. Towards the end of the episode, June actually finds out how disgusting Fred is, how terrible his thoughts are, and how he sees women, and what he has done to one of her friends. Because of this, she is completely taken out of that world that Fred was creating for her, where he was giving her some privileges, and she realizes that this is all for show and this is not real, and that she has no actual rights in this household. And that's why after that moment, she wants to take back whatever little rights she has. And that's why she goes to Nick's room on her own against everything. In Nick's room, she slowly undresses herself and she undresses Nick. Now, it is very important to note that the undressing here is symbolic of vulnerability, intimacy, and independence. Being independent from the uniforms given to both of these people by Gilead, because they are not allowed to wear anything except their red clothes and their black clothes, where they are assigned roles and they are not human beings. Them taking their clothes off is them showing their humanity to each other. Besides, this also separates this lovemaking scene from the scenes that we have seen before, which include the ceremony where everyone is fully clothed, and the little arrangement that Nick and June had previously in the same episode where they were performing some duties. Here, it's about romance. It's about intimacy. It's about the concept of love that June wants to defend. And that's why there is a lot of skin show, there is a lot of touching, and a lot of nudity in this part of the show. And that's how the same episode breaks down the meaning of sex into multiple different things and shows us what it can mean depending on the context and the mentality and the thought process of the characters. And yet a lot of people will question, do we have to show nudity? I mean, do we have to show private parts? What's the point? Like, can't we just do a little bit of skin and that's enough? Okay, so let's talk about that in the context of one of my favorite films. I hate to say favorite, but that's how people believe that you love it. Yi Tu Mama Tambien. the beauty of this film is that for a long time you don't know why there is so much sexuality and so much nudity. Now, the film is about two best friends, Tenok and Julio, who meet this woman called Luisa, a married woman. The three decide to go on a road trip together without those two boys' girlfriends. Now, throughout the road trip, the boys, who are teenagers, are constantly flexing or talking about sex and women and all kinds of things that Indians would call vulgar, deranged, that sort of thing. There's a point in the film where the two are actually masturbating next to each other. And I found it very strange at the beginning of the film. Like, why is this happening? And I became one of those people who says, why do you have to show this? This is not necessary. This is against our culture. And I was like, it's okay. Let's give this film a chance. I don't know what's going on, but let's watch it. But more of this nudity kept happening in the film. And every time there was a sex scene or some sort of nudity, there was an awkwardness about it. Like, the characters are forcing it and they kind of want to do it, but they're not able to, or they're not good at it. Like, there's something really off in their dynamic. And throughout, the two boys are so hell-bent on displaying their abilities as men with lots of testosterone. And when finally at the end of the film, during the climax, we get to know the actual dynamic of these two men and the beauty of their relationship and what they have been repressing and hiding this whole time, and it comes through in an intimate moment which is so natural and comfortable between them, that we finally understand what all the awkwardness and nudity and weirdness has been about. And the film suddenly seems like this profound tale of love that nobody understands, that nobody sees. And that's just the beauty of good filmmaking at the end of the day. Yes, nudity can be crass, sexuality can be crass if it is done badly, if it is done for the wrong reasons. It has to make sense in the context of a film or show. It has to have some form of beauty to it. That beauty doesn't have to be visual. That beauty has to come through the story, has to come through the emotion that is trying to come out of the film. It's just that simple. And to discount and reject every form of sexuality and nudity on screen is just very juvenile, nothing else. It's not against our culture, it's not against anything. It's just questioning you. It's questioning your personality, it is questioning your thought process. Just give it a chance. Question that nudity, question that sex on screen, and ask yourself why it is eliciting a certain kind of reaction from you. And the real reaction, not the kind of reaction society wants you to have. Think about what it makes you feel. And maybe it'll answer a lot of questions about who you are as a person. Ever thought about that? Thank you guys so much for watching. A lot of people have been telling me that you never find out when a new video comes out, so you have to keep searching. What you can do is you can hit the notification bell next to the subscribe button and you will find out the moment a new video releases. And yeah, please like this video. It really helps out the channel, and please share this with your sex positive friends. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.